Welcome to another Web Wednesday at Connigan Newberry Law Firm. I'm Tara Newberry, partner at the firm, and here to talk to you today about traffic tickets and DUIs and answer any questions that you have about those matters. So just to give you a background, I was a police officer for 8 years, so I've written probably more traffic tickets than most lawyers have ever taken to trial. So I have a lot of experience with traffic citations. And we handle them here in the office. Nevada is kind of a unique jurisdiction when it comes to traffic tickets. A lot of the citations that are issued have a mandatory court appearance, which means you can't just simply pay the ticket. You actually have to come to court and enter a plea and be adjudicated by a judge. A lot of other jurisdictions, and where I was a police officer in Ohio, pretty much every ticket you could just mail in a payment and that would take care of your citation. However, when you simply just make the payment, you'll get points on your license. Nevada, if you have more than 12 points in a 12-month period, it's an automatic suspension of your driving privileges. 12 points sounds like a lot, but when you think about the types of violations that carry the higher point charges, running a stop sign is actually a 4-point violation. If you run a stop sign, get into an accident, and were speeding, you could easily get assessed up to that 12-point mark in one chain of events. So while 12 points may seem like a lot, there's a varying degree of how those demerit points are assessed on traffic tickets. Now, a lot of times when people are pulled over and they'll ask the officer, well, is this going to put points on my license? The officer's not really going to be able to answer. They may give you some information, but they won't specifically know what the points will carry. So there are those occasions where the officer will write you a citation that carries a heavy point, and they don't realize that that's what the outcome would be. So I've got to make sure I clarify that when a police officer writes a violation, they write a violation for what they observed and what they believe the infraction is. Don't think that police officers are out there trying to give you a lot of points on your license. That's not their intent. That's not their job. And having been one, I can vouch for the fact that I never took that into consideration whatsoever. I didn't even know what the point assessments were when I was a police officer. So what can you do about it? Well, here in Nevada, different than in other jurisdictions, we have negotiated sentences and the ability to get your citation reduced so that you don't get the higher points assessed to your license. The reason you don't want points on your license is because your insurance premiums will go up. Oftentimes when you go for a renewal, or if it's your first time applying for insurance, they're going to get a DMV report. They're going to look and see how many traffic violations you've had and how many points you have. Every demerit point you have is going to increase the amount of insurance that you have to pay. So ultimately, while a traffic ticket citation may cost you $250, that violation may actually cost you several $1,000s over the next few years because of an increased insurance premium. So what really should be the focus when you get a traffic ticket is to get the points reduced. Sometimes you can get the fine reduced, but more importantly, you want to be able to get that moving violation reduced to a non-moving violation so that you don't get any demerit points on your DMV report. So how do you do that? Well, that's where a law firm comes in or attorneys will come into court. They go to an attorney session and we negotiate. And part of that negotiation is kind of knowing what the standard going rate is for reductions. A lot of it depends on who the judge is that's sitting that day. We have a lot of pro tem judges that will come in and sit for traffic court. So some judges have different standards than others. And then we have a traffic commissioner. So if you get a ticket in justice court, if the ticket, on the bottom of each ticket, it's going to mark the different jurisdictions and the courts that are going to be hearing the case. And in justice court, we have an actual traffic commissioner, and the traffic commissioner hears all of the traffic matters, and he's there all day long. He does have certain days of the week where he's not on the bench, and there'll be a pro tem judge in, but for the most part we have the same judge anytime it's a justice court citation. If you are in the city of Las Vegas, you'll be in municipal court. Municipal court, they have an arraignment judge, and then they have assigned sitting judges that hear the traffic matters. For the most part, if you get a city violation, we would be working within their standard negotiations. There's not a whole lot of negotiating that can happen with a city of Las Vegas ticket, but sometimes if we enter a not guilty plea at arraignment, we can actually go in and meet with the prosecutor and try to work up a deal. For someone who has a multitude of tickets, that is a strategy that we would use to hopefully be able to get reduced sentences in exchange for that no contest or guilty plea. So before we get any further, let's talk about the pleas. If you plead not guilty, obviously you're exercising your right to trial. If you go to trial on a traffic matter, it is very difficult to win because it's your word against the police officers, and typically you did do whatever they wrote you a ticket for. Sometimes there are mistakes that are made. Sometimes there are issues to address, and you may want to take it to trial for that purpose. But for the most part, if you take a traffic matter to trial, you most likely will lose. And when you lose, then the court is usually inclined to give you the maximum sentence. So it's something you really have to consider. You would really have to have a strong argument for why you were not guilty to take a traffic case to trial. It takes up a lot of time in the court, it's cumbersome, and it's typically resented by both the prosecutor and the judge. But we've done them, and I certainly as an officer have testified for traffic matters, and I can tell you that I can't ever remember losing. So that was my experience, and I think the same holds true here in Nevada. So if you enter a not guilty plea, then you're going to have to go back to court at least 2 more times. Once for a pretrial, where the witnesses come in and everyone talks and you try to negotiate out the matter, and then the actual trial. So it's also time consuming for you, the individual, as well as the attorney, because you have to keep coming back to court. If you enter a no contest plea at the arraignment, then you're saying to the court, I'm not admitting to guilt, but I'm also not going to fight the ticket. In those situations, the court will sometimes amend the charges, sometimes they'll reduce the fines. When you go into traffic court without an attorney, however, they're not going to offer this to you unless you ask for it. So a lot of times when people appear in court and say no contest, they end up getting traffic school, the max fine, and they don't get any points reduced from their license. Depending on who the judge is and whether the judge will actually inform them of what those different negotiated rates are. If you go in and say, I'm going to plead no contest, can I get the moving violation reduced, then they may do that. The other difficult thing is in going down to court yourself is that you would have to not only find a place to park, which is a challenge downtown around the courthouse. You have to find a place to park, then you have to wait in the line to get into the courthouse, which can be very lengthy, and then you have to sit and wait on your docket. The traffic court docket starts usually at 8 or 8:30, depending on which court you're in, and can run until 11:30. Judge always goes to lunch, but you could be there all morning waiting for a case to get called. The privilege that attorneys have is that we don't have to wait in the line at the courthouse. We have our own entrance into the courthouse, so I don't have to wait in line, other than to wait for other attorneys to go through the security clearance. But we also don't have to wait in traffic court. We have attorney sessions that we go to where we just walk in, enter a plea, make the agreement, walk right back out. So it's much quicker for an attorney to handle the case than it is for an individual to handle it. Even for fix-it tickets, like if you were given a citation for not having a front license plate and you had to go to either a DMV or to a police station and have the officer sign off on the back of the ticket that you had fixed that license plate issue or a headlight, something like that. then you have to take that ticket down to the traffic counter and let them know that you had made the correction and you needed to have it reflected on your record that it had been fixed. The wait time typically is at least an hour to an hour and a half for something like that. And again, they have an attorney window. So even for a fix-it ticket, an attorney can go down and take care of it a lot faster than an individual can. If you enter a plea of guilty, then you're obviously admitting to the offense, and there's not much difference between a guilty plea and a no contest plea with regard to traffic. A lot of times people will ask, well, even if I pled guilty or no contest and got the 2 points assessed to my license, can I do traffic school? Yes, you can. As long as traffic school is not part of your adjudication. In other words, if the court orders you to complete traffic school, then you can't use traffic school to erase points. So traffic school will only erase points if you do it outside of the sentence that you've been given by the court. So that's why we oftentimes try to convince the court not to give you traffic school. That way, let's say you did have a 4-point violation. We got it reduced to a 2-point violation. You then, after the fact, could attend traffic school, and they do it online, get a certificate of completion, then you could take that to the DMV and get those other 2 points taken off of your license. So understanding how this works is important as far as your strategy in going forward. So recently, Connigan Newberry launched a new division of our law firm called Ticket Chicks. Ticket Chicks is a mobile traffic office. It's a big blue truck. It will be driving around town to standard locations. You can follow it on Twitter to find out where the truck is, and it'll also have scheduled stops, and that schedule will be on our website and have a live feed so that you always know where the truck is. The concept is that this truck will provide convenient locations for people to drop off their tickets. You also can always email us your traffic ticket as long as we have a copy of the ticket, your driver's license, your proof of insurance, and your registration. If you have all of those things and you send them to us, I will take a look at your ticket, make sure that it's something that we can actually handle and adjudicate. Sometimes there are misdemeanor charges where you actually do have to be present in court. That happens very, very rarely. There's only 2 citations I can think of where that would be true, DUI being one of them. And in those instances, we'll go to court with you. But for all other traffic matters, we handle it. We go to court for you. We negotiate the sentence. And then we'll send you a disposition letter after we've adjudicated your ticket, letting you know what fine you have to pay and what the result was. There's always going to be a fine. The only time we can eliminate a fine completely is if, for instance, you didn't have your insurance card with you when you got stopped and they wrote you a ticket for no proof of insurance. If that happens, and we show the judge that you did have current insurance when you were stopped, you just didn't have it with you, a lot of times they'll dismiss those tickets. Similarly, with no driver's license, there's a handful of pro tem judges that will actually dismiss those if you show that the license was actually valid. Sometimes they'll still issue a fine for not having it in your possession. There's no points with that, but you still would have to pay a fine. So for the most part, you're always going to have some sort of fine. Our goal is to reduce it as low as possible. But more importantly, you don't have to go to court. You don't have to try to figure out what the going rate is for the type of ticket that you have. And you'll get the best deal possible using Ticket Chicks to go for you. So